Hello, everyone, and welcome to another track guide. This week, the IRO4 visits Spa for what is a very fun combo. The racing should be really tight and good this week because there is a ton of drafting to be had, so packs should stay nice and tight. There should be a lot of overtaking, a lot of wheel-to-wheel combat, and a lot of cars that can keep up with other cars that maybe they wouldn't have been able to before because there is so much draft. That said, there are still some technical bits and there are still some finer points that you do want to know about that we'll try to talk about here as we go over the lap corner by corner. But I do think overall this combo is a really good one. It should be good racing. It should be super fun. But let's go ahead and take a look at the lap before we dive into the details. Before we get started, let's take a look at our track conditions. We have a 26 degrees Celsius track with 22-degree air temperature and moderately low usage at 36%. I should note that this week the air temperature is going to be particularly important. The lower this number, the more engine power we should have, which means more power going down those really long straights and flat out sections, which is only going to help our top speed and our lap time. I do think the wind direction is also going to be a factor here in lap times quite a bit. If the wind is blowing with you down a straight, it's going to help you go a little bit faster. If it's blowing against you, it's gonna make you go a little bit slower. I don't know, to be honest, whether or not the south direction is helpful or not for us here, but do just keep that in mind. We also do have a rules tab this week that outlines where the track limits are in each corner and kind of shows you in some detail about where you can go before getting an off track. Essentially, as long as you're in contact with the red and white curbing around the track, you're still in good shape. Going outside of that red and white curbing is where you're going to get in trouble. As for our laps, I did a couple, and then I pushed the limits a little bit too much, found some gravel, and put it in the wall. So I had to reset the car. So then we started on a fresh tank here. We did a lot of 22s, made a mistake, got down into the 23s, and then, back into the 21s. We finally found the lap that we're actually going to analyze, which is this 21.484. It's the cleanest lap I have. Obviously, there are some faster ones. We did a 21.079, a 21.302, a 21.326. but those either had some sort of mistake where we kind of like missed a corner by a little bit too much, or an off track that meant I just really didn't want to highlight a lap that has an off track. So this is a nice clean lap that makes most of the corners the way we want to go and allows us to talk about the concepts. Again, it's not about the outright fastest lap. It's not about the lap time that we're here for. It's about the concepts and following those concepts in the corners that we want to apply them to. And if they are the right concept for that corner, it's going to eventually equal lap time for us, regardless of what the track conditions are. So we're happy to talk about this a little bit slower lap because it does show all of those concepts. Anyway, let's go ahead and get stuck in with the lap. Turn 1 is called the source, and from the exit here, we're flat out for 2, yes, 2 whole kilometers. So it's quite literally the source of our speed for a very long time. With that in mind, we are 100% focused on a good exit and getting on throttle early to maximize our speed for that very long distance. To accomplish this, we want to be patient on turn in and square off the corner by taking as late of an apex as we can. This will open up the exit and allow us to aggressively commit back to throttle very early. Keep in mind that this line does expose the inside to overtakes, so in a race it may be advantageous to turn in just a little bit earlier than is ideal to defend from a late lunge. I'll also note that if you're close to an opponent into turn 1, it usually makes sense to wait to make the overtake and use the draft down the Kemmel straight instead. If you overtake someone here, you'll usually expose yourself to losing that position again almost immediately. We can start braking a little after the 100 board, and I'm usually looking for the red or orange outlined opening in the fence as my reference. We're going to be patient as the car slows down, waiting until we're a little bit deeper into the corner than normal before we turn in for the apex. As the car gets to the apex curbing, we can commit aggressively back to throttle, and on exit we want to keep our right tires in contact with the red and white curbing as we look to use as much of the runoff as we can. On this lap, we could have used a little bit more apex curbing, but this only extended our corner entry slightly, and we're still able to get a good exit. Turns 2 through 4 are what Spa is best known for. Rouge is the little kink at the bottom of the hill, and Raidillon is the curve as we rise back up the hill. If you've never seen cars here in real life, especially Formula 1, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's absolutely incredible. In some cars on iRacing, you need to lift through here, but it's easily flat out in the IR04 the entire race, even on cold tires. The only thing to note is to aim to use as much of the curb at each apex as possible to straighten out the corners as much as you can. Turns 5 and 6 are known as Le Combe, and this is our first breaking point for quite some time. This is also the point on the track where a lot of overtakes are going to be completed and defended against, so before we talk about our goal for the corner, let's talk a little bit about racecraft and our goal in wheel-to-wheel combat. In general, you want to have the inside line here. It will allow you to control the corner and puts you in a better position through the next sequence of corners. Whether you're attacking or defending, the inside line is king when going wheel to wheel in Le Combe to complete or defend from an overtake. When you're not attacking or defending, the goal here is to use the entry and first apex to continue to slow the car down. We're coming off of the highest speed section of track, and we don't immediately exit onto another fast section, so carrying as much of that speed into the beginning of the corner as we can will buy us a little bit of time here. That said, we want to make sure we don't run too deep into the corner, and we want to be finished slowing the car as soon as we get through the first apex so that we can commit back to the direction change that we need to get to the second apex by turning left. To summarize, we're slowing the car through the entry and first apex, with our goal being able to get back on throttle as we commit back to the left for the second apex. Exiting the second apex, we can keep the pedal to the floor, so the smoother we are at this transition, the faster we'll be through the next part of the lap. As we exit the second apex, we want to focus on working our way back to the left as quickly as possible so we can open up the next corner as much as we can. Turn 7 is called Malmedy, and as mentioned, this should be easily flat out as long as we exited turn 6 well and focused on opening up the entry here as much as possible. The only real notes here are to use as much apex curbing as you can, and on exit you can use quite a lot of the curbing, but you do bottom out if you use too much, which we want to avoid. The amount we use here on exit is probably about as far as you want to go. Turn 8 is known as Rivage or Brussels depending on who you ask, but it's a tricky little corner. We're heading back downhill and doing a 180 degrees with the outside of the track breaking away from us, so it can be very easy to run too deep here and find yourself in the gravel if you overdo it. It can also be very easy to overbrake and turn, in which case the car will be put on its nose and it'll cause a spin as well. Our goal here is to gently slow the car and ease it into the corner. Then we'll let it settle in at the apex before we commit back to the throttle on exit. Being too aggressive on entry or getting on the throttle too early on exit will also cause us to run wide or spin, so the name of the game here is patience. We can start braking right around the beginning of the entry curbing and we'll gently guide the car into the apex. As the car settles into the apex and feels like it's ready to rotate a little bit more, we can start to get back on throttle. On exit, we can run the car all the way out to the red and white curbing, but we don't want to use too much of it because we immediately need to move back across the road to set up for turn 9. Turn 9 is called No Name Corner, which kind of means it does have a name. Anyway, this is a pretty fun corner and one where we'll test the track limits, but there is also some danger as well. Turn 9 can be taken pretty quickly, and it does lead us onto another fast section of track, so we want to carry as much speed through it as we can. That all starts with our entry as we aim to use all of the red and white curbing on the right. Note that there is danger here if you start to use some of the green curbing because it does dip down and the car can bottom out, preventing you from being able to turn. Because of that, I do leave a little bit of margin for safety because I've definitely made that mistake before and ended up in the wall straight ahead. As we get on the entry curbing, we want to aggressively commit to the apex, and our goal is to use all of the apex curbing with our left tires fully on top of the curb. As we turn in, we want to briefly lift to transfer the weight of the car forward to help with rotation to get to the apex. On this lap, we don't use all of the curbing that we'd like to, but it's close enough that we don't lose too much time. On exit, we want to test track limits by using all of the runoff we can while staying in contact with the red and white curbing as we look to maintain as much speed and momentum as possible, storming back down towards turn 10. Turn 10 is known as Pouhon, and it's another high-speed corner where we're going to aim to maintain as much speed as possible. We're also going to combine it with turn 11, treating the two corners as a sweeping double apex. Since we're still heading back downhill, the track is still braking slightly away from us, so it can be very easy to understeer here. Because of that, we're once again looking to gently slow the car and guide it into the first apex. One good way to measure how well we're doing here is tire scrub. The less tire scrub we have while carrying good speed through the corner, the better job we did at easing the car into the corner, which usually means better maintenance of momentum. We can start braking right around the light pole on the right as we guide the car into the first apex. As we leave the first apex, we want to run the car back out to the exit curbing as we ramp up acceleration and continue to maintain that same arc as the car starts moving back towards the second apex. The less movement we need from our hands through the middle part and ending part of the corner, the more speed we can carry as we're asking the front tires to do less work in direction changes. As we clip the second apex, we'll once again continue our arc out of the corner and into the final exit curbing, being careful to avoid tire scrub to maintain our momentum. Turns 12 and 13 are another set of corners with two names, Fanges or Campus, depending on who you ask once again. Whatever they're called, they provide us with our next challenge, but it's kind of a familiar one. We're coming off of a high-speed section and not immediately entering another one, so we can treat this very similarly to Lacombe. That said, turn 12 and 13 are a little longer, so it's a little bit more involved. We'll use the first part of turn 12 to slow the car down and make sure that we're in a good position to change directions on exit back towards turn 13. We can start by braking right around the beginning of the entry curbing, and we're looking to join up with and hug the apex curbing as much as we can. We want to be patient here before we add a little bit more throttle on exit, but we want to be careful also not to run too far to the left so we don't cut ourselves off for the turn 13 apex. As we start to transition directions back towards turn 13, we want to give a little bit of a lift to transfer the weight of the car forward to help with rotation as we head back into the turn 13 apex. As we get to the apex at turn 13, we can commit back to throttle pretty aggressively as we aim to use a large amount of curbing on exit. Note that being a little bit too eager on throttle here can easily push you wide into the gravel and lead to spins and crashes, so the main focus here before committing back to throttle is that the car is pointed in a direction that will allow you to keep it on the road through the exit. Turn 14 is called Stavelot, and it leads us back onto another very long section of flat-out track, so we're back to focusing on a good exit. That said, it isn't a slow corner by any means, so we're still looking to carry a decent amount of speed through it. To do that, we want to use as much of the entry, apex, and exit curbing as we can. You'll notice on this lap, we don't use much of the apex curbing, but ideally we want to use all of it. On entry, we can start braking right around the beginning of the red and white curbing, and we're looking to get turned in pretty much immediately from that point. We'll aim to use as much of the apex curbing as we can, and we want to get back on throttle pretty much as soon as we get there. The only thing that should hold us back from getting back to power aggressively is ensuring that we won't run wide into the gravel on exit, so where the car is pointed when you get back on throttle is key. On exit, we want to use as much of the curbing as we can while keeping our right tires in contact with the red and white curbing to maintain as much speed as we can through the exit. From this point forward, we're flat out until we start braking for the bus stop chicane, so our exit here is once again critical. This next section of track is all easily flat out, so the only thing to consider here is keeping your distance traveled as short as possible. You'll also find that draft through here brings cars close together to create overtaking opportunities as we head down towards the chicane. Turns 18 and 19 complete our lap with a pretty tight and slow chicane. We're coming off of another very high speed section and a drafty section of track, so this is another place where overtaking and defending will take place. Similar to Lacombe, both the outside and inside lines can work, but I prefer the inside line when attacking or defending if I have a choice in most cases. In general, this will allow you to control the corner more than your opponent. I should also note that if you start to push your braking points here, at some point you're likely to run deep in the corner. When rejoining, I suggest to do so by cutting the corner back onto the main straight. You'll get a slowdown by doing this, but it's the safest option to avoid race-ending contact. Because the chicane here is so tight, we do need to slow the car down substantially into the first apex, so we'll start braking hard as we start to approach the red and white entry curbing. We want to stay tight to the first apex as we aim to open up the second apex as much as possible for a good exit on the main straight and back towards the finishing line. At each apex, there are these taller raised curbs further onto the inside, so we want to be careful to not use too much of those as they can unsettle the car. Another note is that it can be very easy to lose the rear of the car exiting the second apex if you're too quick to throttle or have too much steering input, so be careful with your inputs there. On exit, we want to aim to use as much of the exit curbing as possible as we look to maximize our acceleration heading across the line to finish our lap here at Spa. As always, I just want to thank everyone for liking, subscribing, following, commenting, hanging out on Twitch. If you haven't done that, it's twitch.tv/El Gato con la Pipa. If you want to join my Discord and ask me questions after this track guide outside of the comments, you definitely can. The link is in the description below. The link to my channel on Twitch is in the description below. The link to the lap, if you want to compare your telemetry to mine, is also in the description below. Hopefully the timestamps also work this week, so chapters on the video should be working now. It was just a formatting error. Someone helped me out with that last week in the comments, so very, very much appreciated there as well. Oh yeah, and if you're looking for any sort of sim gloves or anything like that, check out Muradness.com, and if you use promo code ELGATO, you'll get 5% off at checkout, and I get a little kickback as well. Plus, Daniel Morad is a very nice guy, real life racing driver if you don't know him, and he also streams on Twitch as well. Anyway, until next time, I hope you take care of yourselves. I hope you have fun out there racing at Spa, and yeah, good luck, have fun.